Okay, kids, when last we left off, we had taken our plates, we had joined those plates and glued in our back strip, if you remember. So now that that's all done, and I've done some preliminary sanding, I haven't done my final sanding on this yet, but I got it fairly smooth. You can use a scraper or your random orbiter, or I took my hand plane to it to quickly knock down some of that back strip. So the idea now is we're going to figure out how we want our grain to show on our back. This is that rosewood back. So we'll take our mold once we've got that all set up, and we're going to orient our grain, see how we like our grain to look on the back. In this case, this is our rosewood back. So this is a Triple O Martin slope shouldered guitar that I'm going to do here. So I'm going to put my mold on, and I'm going to line up my center lines. The center of your mold, where they join, that needs to be right on the center line of your back and top. So once I can set it on there, I can look at it, I can say, oh, I like the way the grain comes this way and that way, or I can turn this around the other direction and look at it. Again, I've got my show side up so I can see what that looks like, and then I can again center line on my center back strip, and I can look at that orientation. Here now, I kind of like it this way better. My grain's coming in on my upper bout and kind of flares out on my lower bout. So I think that's probably the orientation I like. Also, depending on the length of your plates, you can push this one way or the other to sometimes expose a little defect or hide a defect by pushing it one way or the other. So look at all the different ways you might want to lay this out. Orient this to your center lines, and once you're on your centers, which is like about so, then take your pencil and just draw this onto your show side. In the case of a dark wood like this, get yourself a white pencil. On some of the lighter woods, you can use the regular black lead, but the white pencil works great on this sort of a thing. So that is my layout and orientation. I assume maybe you can see this, but I've got my line now that I know roughly what my body's shape's gonna look like and how the grain lines are going to line up. I want to tell you one other thing. If you remembered, when we build our molds, we left a space here and at the butt end for a flat piece of plywood to fit into there. If you remember, the discussion was that when we glue our blocks in, you really want a flat surface here. And generally when you build a mold, that's kind of hard to do. So I come back and inlet a piece of plywood that's flush with these surfaces, and that then when I go to glue my block in gives me a really nice flat area, so I get a good tight glue joint when I'm gluing my blocks in at both ends. But it serves a double purpose. When I'm laying this out this way and I'm drawing my line, which we just did, I'm going to draw this line, this inlet line here, as a reference. And what that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to come back after I have cut this out, and I'm going to put right in the center of my center line, I'm going to put a kerf. Kerf is a saw cut. And I'm going to put a kerf in here on both sides. Then when I'm gluing my top and back to the sides, I'll have a slot here that I can register with a key I've made that goes into this slot as well. I've got a couple different ways I key my processes, and so what I want you to do for now, and you'll see this later as we get closer, but go ahead and draw that line down to there, and leave that extension, because that's going to allow us to key this in when we're gluing our tops and backs on. And again, you'll see that better as we get to that part of the build. We've now got our outline on our plates, the backs, the tops. You've oriented the grain lines the way you like it. So now we're going to cut this out on our bandsaw. But the first cut we're going to do, we want to make 2 cuts on all of our plates where you come straight across here on both the top and the bottom. And the reason is this strip we can use as a back strip for our internal back strip on our back in the guitar. You want this to be perpendicular, right angles to your grain on the back, and so I'll show you that as we get to it. But for now, just take and cut both here and here. This line that we drew with our mold, that's that inlet for our flat block, that's our line we can come to. We don't need to be outside that line. But if you didn't do this on your mold, or you bought a mold and it doesn't have this, just remember, stay 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch proud of your line. You want to cut this out bigger than what it's ultimately going to be. If you cut right on your line, you're going to good chance you'll not be able to fit this properly when you go to glue it onto your sides. So stay 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, 1/2 inch on the outside of this line. But cut these 2 pieces first, and you'll see why later. If it doesn't make sense to you now, just trust me on this one. Okay, here we go. I'm going to cut these. I'm going to turn on my back and cut these. Okay, here's what I want you to do next. I want you to take your bandsaw and just go in about 1/4 of an inch right on the center of your center line. I want you to do that on both ends, and that's going to be our key when we go to glue our backs and tops on. If we have these little keys, then everything lines up as we're marking for our braces where they come through the sides, all that stuff. Again, you'll see as we get there, trust me. But go ahead now, and right in the center of your center line on your back and your top, make a saw curve just about 1/4 of an inch deep. You don't want to go too deep because that'll go into your top and would show up. But these are going to be keys for when we're gluing things up. So I'm going to do that now. So there it is, all ready to go. So next thing on these, we're going to clean up the back, sand all that, and then we're going to start putting our braces on. Same with the top. So now I'll cut another one of these so you can see. I'll maybe do that rosewood. It might show up better as I'm cutting. Okay, there they are. We got our four backs and tops for the four guitars we're building here just for fun. And there's the rosewood in a triple O with 12 fret neck. There's the top. That's going to be that's Lutz spruce. Here's the jumbo, the Dreadnought J45 slope shouldered in the fancy mahogany. That's the back. There's the top for that, the fancy mahogany. Going to be so pretty, and a big jumbo Dreadnought. There's our three-piece pine top for our Nick Lucas. And there's the back for that in mahogany. Again, a nice, really nice figured piece of mahogany. Very lightweight. And our fourth and final guitar is an all mahogany. Again, it's actually African mahogany, and it's got really pretty grain in it. And that's going to be a Nick Lucas also. So there's the top, and there's the back on that one. So those are all cut out. Next thing we're going to start doing is bracing these guys. So, okay kids, remember I had you cutting off doing those cut off pieces straight across the back and the top, and I told you that we were going to use these. And here's how we're going to use these pieces. We're going to use this as the inside lining against our back joint. Now, what you want to do here, and what is typical, is you want your grain to run for this lining piece, the back lining. You want the grain to run at a 90-degree angle from your long grain on your back or top. Well, you're not going to do this on the top, just on the back, but you want that to be at 90 degrees. So that's why when we cut this across that as a cutoff from our backs, it makes a perfect piece to put in here as your lining for your back strip. And I do mine as a solid piece, and then I cut out for my braces when I'm ready to put my braces on. So what I would do would be take a piece that I want to use for my back. In this case, on this rosewood, I like the contrast of mahogany against it. I could use spruce. Here I already made a piece here out of that actually pine, but it could have been the spruce or anything else, and that would go like so. Again, my grain lines are running this way, 90 degrees perpendicular to the grain lines of the back. So I'm going to show you what I would do here with this guy. First thing I'm going to do is it's not straight there. So I would take my straight edge, and just draw a straight line on here, so I get my first. I'm starting to cut this out. So there's my first piece. Cut that first thing out. Now I've got my first straight line here. Now I'm going to true that up on my belt. So now I've got a nice straight line this way. I've got a glue joint here from where I glued up my two plates. That's my seam. I don't care if I've got a seam in this. These are all going to get cut into sections anyway once we put our braces on. So this glue line doesn't bother me, but I do want to clean it up, so I'm going to go here. So there's my nice straight line. Now I've got I like for these to be about 3/4 of an inch. This actually is right at 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to put a couple more marks on there, draw the line, and cut that. Okay, now I'm going to come back and cut that. Screw that up on the table. All right, there you go. Very nice, nice and straight lines. 3/4 of an inch. It can be as little as a 1/2 inch. I find those a little thin. 5/8. But again, 3/4 is a nice size. That looks nice against when you look in the sound hole. It gives it a nice appearance. So there's your back lining. Looks very cool. 3/4 of an inch. Again, that's mahogany. You could use your spruce, which is very common, or anything. Now, you could run, if you wanted to, you could take a piece of some wood, and you could run it with the grain long ways, not at a right angle. You could cut a strip out of this long piece and have it run like that. It would be fine. But in theory, if this back seam were to split, it could split this grain along the grain with it. So by having it run this way, it's not gonna split because the grain's running this way. It's not gonna let it split that way. So in theory, to have that grain at a right angle is a better way to do that. And it's the most common, and it looks cool. So that's how. That's how I get my back plate linings for the inside of the guitar. And I do, on all of my guitars, I've always inlaid a little ducky. And I don't know why, but my very first guitar I did that, so I've done it ever since. So if you ever see a guitar with a little ducky inlaid into the lining, you'll know that was me. So I've got 4 of these made, and I'm going to do my inlay now, and I'm not going to show you that because it's not germane really to what we're going to do. We're going to talk about inlaying later when we do the headstock. You'll get an idea how to do some inlaying. But for now, this is just something I do. You don't need to inlay anything on here. Most people print out a paper label and put over the linings and glue that in there. That's more common. I don't do that, but to each his own. So I'm going to do those inlays. I have to get those ready now, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how we're going to glue this on. So I got my little ducky into my lining that you can see there. So there's my piece of lining, all nice. By the way, once I do this and I sand everything smooth, on my belt sander, I don't know if you can see this, but I roll this on here so that I can get a nice bevel on these edges. So you could leave them square. It's nice to round that a bit and get a nice rounded edge on it. Then when you glue it down, once it's glued down, you can come back and sand that bevel a little bit more and really blend it nicely and make it look real professional that way. So there's my lining ready to go. The next thing I want to do, I sanded the show side on here, but my inside still has my glue. So I'm going to take my scraper blade and I'm going to take that to this glue. Okay, so I got that nice and smooth. That's all scraped. Now here's how you glue this on here. You're going to take your straight piece and you're going to put it in here. By the way, you got to think in terms of you're going to have a neck block up here and you're going to have an end block down here. Can you see those? Yep. So I don't really care if this is perfectly flush against my block. I don't care if I got a little gap in there. You can certainly make this longer, and then you're going to come back and cut it off when you're fitting your back to the rest of the body. So, but just be aware you got your block and your 2 blocks that you have to go to. Here I've got a little space between my end block. I'm going to fill that in, so that'll get filled in. But here's the trick. This makes this real simple and perfect. You're going to take a straight edge and you're going to put beside here. You're going to look at your lining and you're going to just eyeball the lining so that it's centered at both ends. You're going to take your straight edge and move it right up against your lining, like so. Now this is my go bar deck. So I'm going to put one of my go bars on here. And a second go bar. And there I go. Now I can take this away, put it right there, and it's dead on. It's right where I want it to be. And if not, I can adjust it a little bit. There we go. That looks great. So now I'm going to come back and use my go bar deck for the rest of the gluing of this down. I've got a little support piece that I'm going to put over this to help distribute the clamping pressure evenly. So I'm ready to glue my lining onto my back, and this we're just going to do with our yellow glue. So you're going to just come here and put on some yellow glue, like so. Take your fingers, spread it out. Don't be afraid to get into this stuff. I see guys using brushes and rollers and stuff. It doesn't hurt you. You can get your fingers in it. But that's, you know, be as neat and tidy as you like. But just get a nice painted, you want the whole, get everything covered nice once with your glue. You don't need to have a lot, but you don't need to be stingy either. So now I can come here and drop that right in where I want it. Look at that, it's perfect. Right here. So there's a real slick way to glue your linings in. Now, some people put their braces on first and then come back and cut these pieces into there. I don't like that because I've done it before and they end up being askewed a bit. This way you know your lining looks perfectly straight all the way down, and that's what you want it to look good when you have it. When somebody looks in there inside the guitar, that's one of the things. That's one of the first things they see is that inside lining. So I always like for this to look nice and straight because it's one of those things people are going to see. These go bars I bought at Menards. They were those things they'd put in the snow. It's got a reflector on it. They're fiberglass. I cut them down myself to fit in my go bar deck, and they work great. I like them for certain jobs. Other jobs I have some hickory, some ash that I use. So some white ash. So there's my lining glued down. So now I can take my straight edge away. Undo those two because that's down. Pull that off. Clean up my glue off of that. And then come and make sure I get my glue all cleaned up here. You really want to clean up glue all the time. It's so hard to sand glue that you've left after you've let it harden. So clean up your glue always. Be diligent about that. Some people like to let it skim over before they clean it up, and that's a good way to do it. I'm not that patient. I like to just have at it, get it cleaned up, be done with it. But you'll see guys that like to let it skim over. It makes the cleanup a little bit easier. So there you go. There's your back lining on to the back. So there's my back lining glued down with my go bar deck. Put your straight edge on there. Put it down with your go bars, and then line that up with it, and it'll be perfect on there. And then when we do our braces, we're going to cut those, let those into this piece of lining. So there's that process. I'm going to go ahead and finish my other 3 backs now, and then we'll be ready to, I think the next thing we're going to do is put our rosettes in. So there you go. Okay, kids, if you like and use or find these videos interesting, educational, informative, or maybe just entertaining because you're up late at night, we'd love to have you support us. There's a few ways you can do that. One is click the subscribe button below. That helps YouTube know what we're doing and that we're serious about this. Also, you can hit that bell icon, which tells you when the next videos are coming out. We're going to try and get at least one out a week now that we're up and running here. Also, a good way to support us is become a patron over at our Patreon account. And again, there's a link below for that. Patreon's a cool way that you can sign up and give, $5 a month or $10 or whatever you feel is worth it. If you're using these videos to actually build a guitar and find it interesting and fun, please support us through Patreon. That's I wish I could do this completely for free, but it takes money and time away from my other regular job. So it's a big undertaking, and any support you could send this way is great. It's all been very fun so far for me, and I hope you guys are having fun at this as well, and we greatly appreciate all your support, so thanks.